So, you guys are good to go. I'm going to get you the stand.
The kids going this morning. Maybe you can put the camera right here. Yeah, right here. You don't need to be sideways like that. How's everybody doing?
How are you?
Good. It's been a while since we've been here. It's been 3 hours. I was getting earlier. Where are you guys from?
I'm from Karachi, Pakistan.
Ghana? When the event starts. I'm from Egypt.
Oh, that's in Ghana.
مبروك على سوريا ربنا يحفظها.
Check.
Is it also live streamed? What's your phone? What is your phone? What phone? The i15. Okay. What are you? 16. Just the way I record.
Check.
Maybe 2000. Oh, I have to check. Going on and off.
Apache out here? Do you know Mulham?
Right?
Mulham. Brother Mulham from iSafe, the one who does the sound system. He's a Syrian guy. You don't know Mulham? I thought he did the sound system here. Yeah. Second time. Let's do what he wants to start.
Wait. As for the question, as for the question, I have made it. It's only on and off. On and off. Okay. Yeah.
You guys can get started.
Yeah, this is good.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. My name is Ahmed Rahab, and this is Shana Nissan, and I'm the executive director of CARE Chicago, and Shauna is staff attorney. We are here to speak to you tonight about know your rights, in particular as it relates to travel, including the Hajj season. In light of the current administration's challenges that seem to target many communities, including ours, and so things like what to do with secondary screening, phones, visa statuses, et cetera, et cetera. But before we do that, I wanted to just first tell you a little bit about our organization in the general environment, then turn it over to the legal presentation. CARE Chicago, as you might know, has been around now for 20 years. It's an office of care, a national organization. We have 35 chapters across the country. We're one of the largest and most active. I've been around for the whole 20 years as a co-founder and executive director. And our mission is to defend civil rights, fight against discrimination, violation of your rights, et cetera, promote understanding and fight bigotry and Islamophobia. And particularly after the Gaza genocide started, our work has been just through the roof in terms of client cases. Not only advocating for the innocent lives being taken, whether tax dollars and weapons from our country being sent over there and diplomatic cover, and advocating for the innocent people there and against the genocide and pushing back on the essentially Zionist, racist, supremacist forces in this country that are very strong, but also dealing with the fallback in our own community, which is their attempt to censor and incriminate individuals who are calling out against the genocide. Whether they're students in the protest movements, whether they're employees or in private or public employment. So we've had attorneys, we've had doctors, we've had students, we've had teachers come to us and say, just because of my social media posts, I've been targeted or doxxed or whatever. So we deal with a lot of those cases as well. Just yesterday, I was on Fox, dealing with the shootings in DC and the attempt by many to connect those shootings to our communities and our anti-genocide movements, pushing back against that. Also today on ABC and NBC and Sun Times and Tribune, that's a day in the life of CARE Chicago. That's the environment we're in, but alhamdulillah, because we have great attorneys and strong communications and proactive advocacy, we're able to, in many ways, sometimes we're the only ones in the space to push back and even go on the attack against these forces of hate and demonization of our communities. So with that, I want to turn it over to the legal presentation, and you can take it away.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ahmed, for that introduction. So assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you to Masjid Al-Huda for welcoming me into this beautiful space. So as Ahmed mentioned, my name is Shauna, and I'm the staff attorney at CARE Chicago. And so the purpose of today's presentation is to inform you guys of your rights while you're traveling. We're having this session today because we know that being informed and prepared can make a world of difference in moments of vulnerability like travel. And so more often than not, my clients' travel days are long and exhausting, but they are uneventful, okay? Today, we're gonna be talking a lot about negative hypotheticals, okay? What to do if things go wrong. This is not to cause fear, but to prepare you in case you do end up in such a situation, okay? All right, so I'm gonna begin with some general precautions that I think everybody should take irrespective of your status, okay? Whether you're a US citizen, a green card holder, you're here on a visa, whatever it is, I think these are good tips, okay? So, of course, first you want to gather all of your documents, whatever is required of you to travel, whether it's your passport, your green card if applicable, the visa, whatever. And I want you to have copies of this. I would like you to make a copy to keep in your suitcase, one to have on your person or in your carry-on. And then I also want you to have a digital copy, okay? Like a copy on your phone, a PDF or a picture that you send to somebody here that you trust, okay? So I want you to designate a trusted tracker. This is a trusted person, whether it's a family member or a close friend who knows about your trip and who has a copy of that information too, okay? So I want you to send them a picture of your passport, all those required travel documents, and your itinerary. okay? And I want you to keep them updated on the day of your travel. So, you know, when you land in the United States and you get service, text them, hey, I landed. If you make it past customs and everything goes fine, text them that too, so they're not, you know, overly concerned. And then if you do get pulled into secondary inspection, notify them of that, you know, if possible. If you have time, shoot them a quick text, hey, I'm getting into secondary, okay? So, well, before I start talking about LPRs, I do want to give a general disclaimer. So everything that I'm sharing today is not legal advice. It's general information. If you have specific concerns, especially involving past criminal history or potential immigration violations, please consult with an attorney directly before considering any travel, okay? All right, so for green card holders, I'm sure, you know, many of you will recall Trump's Muslim ban from 2017. So it has not been revived yet. It has not been brought back, right? But we have heard murmurings of a return of, you know, that program or something similar. Okay, and even now, you know, without the Muslim ban, we do know that the administration continues to deny entry to individuals from Muslim majority countries under other pretexts. Okay, all of this, which is to say that if you're from a country that was previously included in the Muslim ban, I would highly discourage travel, okay? And if, you know, again, if you're unsure on whether it's safe to travel, consult an immigration attorney. Now, let's say you choose to travel and you end up in secondary inspection as an LPR, okay? CBP officers, customs officers will often present you this form. It's called the form I-407, okay? Do not sign this. Never, ever, ever sign this. This form I-407, do not sign it. They will present it to you like a favor, like it's something good for you. You know, they'll say, hey, sign this and you can go home, sign this, and, you know, this inspection will be over. They're allowed to lie to you. Do not sign it. Signing this form essentially you're voluntarily giving up your green card. Okay, so typically as a green card holder, before if your green card is to be taken from you, you are entitled to your day in court. You are entitled to stand before an immigration judge and have your case be heard. If you sign this form I-407, you're essentially surrendering that right. So that's not something that we want to do, right? Okay, and then some additional documents that I think would be good to keep with you as a green card holder is proof of continuous residence. So what is continuous residence? If you're a green card holder, you have to show that the United States is your primary home, okay? Despite the travel, no matter where you're going, whether it's Pakistan or wherever, the United States is where you call home, okay? And how do you prove that? You bring documents with you, things like leases or utility bills, phone records, tax documents, driver's license, anything that can show your name and your address and your sort of continued presence in the United States, right? And then, you know, another tip, I'm sure you guys all know, but you know that you should keep every trip under 6 months. Now, in the past, people would take 5-month, 28-day trips and it would sort of fly under the radar. Lately, we're seeing that kind of travel be scrutinized a little bit more heavily. So I would encourage you to, you know, keep your travel sort of well below that 6-month mark, okay? All right, and then, so now let's transition to US citizens. So the US Constitution applies to everybody who's physically inside the United States, right? However, borders are treated differently, okay? So there's this sort of legal fiction where borders, airports, and these other ports of entries are sort of seen as outside the United States. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have constitutional rights, but it means that many of them are weakened, okay? And particularly, I'm thinking about the Fourth Amendment, right? So the Fourth Amendment is your constitutional right that protects you from unreasonable search and seizure, right? Typically, a law enforcement agent can't encounter you in the street and demand, you know, to search you. However, you know, at airports, you can be searched. All of your possessions can be searched, okay? Now, if you're a US citizen, you're really only obligated to show your ID. You know, you have to answer basic questions about your travel. Where did you go? How long were you there? Maybe who did you visit? What did you do there, right? They can also ask you, you know, if you're bringing anything in, you know, Customs can ask those kinds of questions. And you can also, as a US citizen, still be put into secondary inspection, okay? So even if you're a US citizen, you are not exempt from that, and you can still, be asked about your electronic devices, but we'll get more into electronics later, okay? This applies to everybody, whether you're a US citizen or anybody else. You wanna keep your answers brief, okay? Keep them direct and brief. You don't want to give these sort of long meandering answers or offer up more, information that's asked of you, because you could find yourself revealing something that perhaps you shouldn't and end up, having to answer more questions, which we don't want, right? Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the different people that you'll interact with during your trip. Okay, so there's TSA, and they screen passengers, they'll screen cargo and bags, and these are typically the first people that you'll encounter at the airport, usually before you get to your gate, right? If you're uncomfortable, you can certainly opt out of the body scanner, and you can request to be, pat down by somebody in private, and it can be a person of the same gender. Just keep in mind that if you know you're going to request this, that perhaps you want to leave for the airport a little bit earlier, because sometimes it takes them some time to get somebody to do that for you, okay? TSA cannot ask any questions that are, personal, like they can't ask you about your religion or your mosque attendance or your political beliefs without some, specific cause, without some reason for thinking that you are involved in criminal activity. They have to have some independent basis. They can't just ask you those things. CBP, they screen international visitors, returning US citizens and foreign cargo, and they're the ones who run the secondary screenings, okay? Again, with customs, and this applies to everybody, keep your answers very minimal and really just only answer the questions. Like I said, customs has the right to stop, detain, and search anybody and any item. Anything that you have on your person, they can search it. And they can, further search your bags as well. And also pilots have the right to refuse a passenger if they, have reason to believe that they're a threat. Okay. So again, let's get into what TSA can't do. So TSA cannot target you based on religious, racial, or ethnic profiling, okay? And they can't ask you general questions about your personal life without cause, okay? They can't ask who you know, where do you work, all these questions. They can't ask you that unless they have some independent basis to believe that you may be breaking the law. And they cannot handcuff or strip search you. CBP, same thing. They can't target you based on ethnic, religious, they can't profile you based on those protected characteristics. And they too cannot ask you just general personal questions. They can't go on these like fishing expeditions, okay? They can, however, CBP can ask you about your citizenship. They can ask you about the purpose and nature of your travel. Okay, they can ask you what you're bringing back into the country. Again, they can look through your luggage, and they can take your electronic devices from you. They cannot force you to unlock them. They cannot force you to they cannot force you to give them the password, but they can take them from you. Okay. So secondary screening. So this process can vary a little bit based on your status, okay? So as a US citizen, you cannot be denied entry into the United States, okay? Period. If you have a US passport, you cannot be denied entry. They can ask you, questions. They can take you to secondary screening, and you can politely decline to answer any questions that you feel go beyond the scope. And use your best judgment. But if it's not about the travel, if it seems to go beyond the scope of travel, then you can, say, I'm sorry, I don't think this is relevant, or I decline to answer. Okay. And if you're being held for a long time, and if you're a U.S. citizen being held for a long time in this secondary inspection, you should ask if you're free to go. Ask them, am I free to go? And if you're free to go, you should do so. And if they say anything other than yes, you can go, then I would invoke my right to an attorney. At that point, I would say, I'd like to speak to my attorney then, okay? Now, as for lawful permanent residents, the same thing applies. Generally, you cannot be denied entry if you're meeting your requirements, right? If you've maintained continuous residence, you don't have any criminal things that might, cause issues or raise concern, no immigration violations, you should be able to re-enter the country. However, CBP can ask you more invasive questions than they would a US citizen. And the reason being, they can do that to verify that you've maintained good status. So for instance, they can ask you, about continuous residence, like where do you live, things like that. They can also ask you about criminal activity, if you have any criminal history. They can try to ask you about immigration violations in the past. And they can ask about drug use. They can really ask about anything that relates to admissibility and deportability, okay? And then for visa holders, unfortunately, unlike citizens and green card holders, visa holders can be denied for nearly any reason. So when I say visa holder, I mean like F1, B2, J1, H1B, all these visas. CBP has incredible discretion, okay? They can ask you pretty much any question and they can deny you for almost any reason. And a denied entry can also result in a visa cancellation, right? So for visa holders, I think the takeaway here is really, really, unless it's absolutely necessary to travel, I highly discourage you from doing so, okay? All right, and now let's talk about our devices, okay? So like I said, CBP can ask to look at any of your devices, any electronics. You have a laptop, cell phone, iPad, tablet, cameras, anything, okay? And CBP can also ask you to unlock those devices and provide passwords, although you're not obligated to do so, okay? So you can refuse if you're a US citizen, and it says some LPRs, and again, the reason is, if you're a green card holder that has, some potential issues in your record, whether it be criminal or immigration or something else, the rules change a little bit for you, right? You don't have as much protection, essentially. But for a US citizen, you can refuse to unlock the device. The device can be confiscated if they choose to do so, but they cannot keep you, right? As a US citizen, you have to be let into the country. And again, same with the green card holder. They have to let you into the country, but barring those exceptions where there's some issue with your record, okay? And then again, a visa holder, they can be denied for not showing their phone, for not unlocking the device for any reason, okay? So the advice there then is really only travel with the most essential devices and review the content on your devices and see if there's anything that can be misconstrued or used against you, right? And I know, people, the things on their phone are mostly innocuous, but you do have to think about how it might be perceived by someone who's out to get you, right? That's how you should try to think of it. Okay. And then if your device is confiscated, you should write down the name of the officer and the agency who confiscated it, and their badge number if you can get that information, as well as you can also ask for a receipt, okay? So if they take your phone, you can ask for a receipt for the phone. That way you have a record that it's been seized by the government. And then just some general sort of tips before going to the airport. You should, try to travel digitally light. You don't need to bring all your devices. Just bring one and make sure that you've sort of thoroughly reviewed it and made sure there's nothing in there that could be troubling. Again, delete any content that could be misconstrued and review your online presence, okay? WhatsApp, everything, your social media, all of it, look through it. If there's things that should be deleted, go ahead and delete them. And remember that even if you've deleted something locally on your device, it could still be in the cloud. So ensure that it's not there, okay? Make sure you download everything that you want to save onto like some external device that you keep at your house. You don't take it with you, okay? And also disable biometric access before getting to the airport. So don't have your Face ID on, don't have the fingerprint thing. Make it so that you have to enter a code, okay? And the longer the code, the better. If you can do a 6-digit code, that's great. Better security, okay? And don't lie, don't provide false information. Again, don't volunteer any unnecessary information. And if something should go awry, remain calm and firm, and assert, that your right to see an attorney, okay? Do you guys have any questions at this time?
You say having an attorney. What happens if they hold me being a U.S. citizen for whatever reason, and I saw there's a need for having an attorney. So do you think they can allow me to make a phone call? Or how does it go?
So the likelihood of being detained as a US citizen is extremely slim, but I mean, if such a thing were to happen, you are entitled to call your attorney. They should, you have that right and they should oblige that request.
If I don't have my own attorney, any particular, do you think they can?
Oh, I see. If you don't have an attorney, no, the government will not provide one for you. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure, if you're a US citizen or especially an LPR, I would, I would, get in touch with a lawyer and just, or have a trusted attorney that you know of, that you can, get in touch with should something go wrong. Yeah. No, I'm done.
And we can pass the microphone around for questions so they can be heard. Let's do it this way. So we have a program called Travelers Assistance Project, TAP US. TAPUS.org. That's the website you should remember. If you're traveling, there's a hotline on there. And if you call this hotline, we can provide an attorney to help you. It's one of CARE Chicago's projects. That's the website right there. The microphone over here.
So, do I have to contact like a criminal attorney or like an immigration attorney?
So I suppose the answer is really, it depends. If there's an underlying criminal complaint that forms the basis for the immigration issue, you need both, right? But if it's just an immigration issue, you'll definitely need an immigration attorney, and you may need a criminal defense attorney, depending on the situation.
Oh, okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And I have one more question.
Mhm.
If I want to access like information I didn't get a chance to write down, is it more stuff on the website?
Oh, yes, and I can actually go back to.
So in addition to this tapus.org website, where you can fill out a form, or even better, just call a hotline, we also have on our main page, and we'll go there in a second to show you. Actually, if you go to the main page itself, then we'll show them the link at the top. Just carechicago.org. Oh, this is not connected. Okay. If you go to carechicago.org, CAIR Chicago.org, at the very top, there's a link that says protecting your rights, and it has all of the information that was just shared, plus a lot more. Because this is geared towards travel, but you'll also find stuff about driving, protesting, employment, general rights in this current environment. Here it is. So if you actually go to the very top of the site, you see that little link up there? It says know your rights, navigating, what does it say?
Navigating the new administration from travel, ICE, and protest guidelines.
Also immigration stuff. If you click on it, you'll see that it gets you into a very detailed, and you just scroll through that liberally. Just keep going. Flying while Muslim, visa holders, flying while Muslim, more information. 2025. Yeah, this keeps going. Travel advice, if you go up a little bit more. Travel guidelines and advice, employment stuff, templates you can use. So this is a resource that you guys can use, very, very helpful.
I have two questions. First one is.
We got two questions. First one is it safe to travel on green card without immigration violation, without any issues on the back end? Second question is, if there is any immigration violation that I'm unaware of, is there a
Immigration what?
immigration violation? Immigration, you use the word immigration violation, right? So is there a website to do some background check on myself to see if there has been a reported violation?
Okay, so to the first question, if you're a green card holder who doesn't have any criminal history and no immigration violations or other issues that you're aware of, you are in the safest position that one could be as a green card holder to travel. Is there a possibility that at some point, you leave for Hajj and Trump reissues the Muslim ban or some iteration of it such that you can't re-enter? Yes, that is a possibility. So that's why I don't want to say, like, I can't give these sort of broad generalizations. Yes, it's safe. I don't know. It depends on the situation and what happens next. Now, as for figuring out if you have immigration violations, there is a way to do that. So you can do something called a FOIA request. It's a Freedom of Information Act request. And you can do it with whatever agency. I mean, it could be CBP or USCIS. And this is a way to get your entire, immigration record from the government. The only caveat is that it's not quick. These FOIA requests can take some time to process and to, return the response. So if you're traveling in the next couple of weeks, you're probably not going to get it before then. It usually takes months, sometimes, a year. Okay.
So my general advice to the community, and this is not at all legal advice, I'm not even an attorney myself, but just from experience, is that if you're a U.S. citizen, you generally have little to fear because you're guaranteed reentry. And so the most that can happen to you is secondary screening and maybe some phone, issues, whether they ask you to try to open it and you can say no, then they can take it, or maybe they won't get into that, but that's a possibility. If you're a green card holder, my advice is do not travel in this current moment unless necessary. So necessary travel only. And then if you're a visa holder, my advice is don't travel at all right now. Does that make sense?
I have one question. It's been mentioned for the biometrics, you said not to use the biometrics. What is the reason behind that? Is it safe?
So I'll tell you, I had a client who was unlocking his password he had biometrics and he unlocked his phone and the officer just took it, and it was unlocked. And so now they have full access to it. So it's a matter of, you might accidentally unlock it, unwittingly or something, and then they can just intervene and take it, and then it's fair game.
Thanks.
My question is, you said they can repossess your telephone. The question is, if they repossess the phone, and if it's still locked, what good it is for them?
So they have this sort of like AI technology thing where they have this external device where even if the phone is locked, they can plug that device into this external device and do some cursory searches through the phone and kind of see the content. So even if it's locked, it's still safer, but they still have access. It's a good question.
So by denying, if I don't unlock the phone, it's not a criminal act.
It's not a criminal act. No. Mm-mm.
You have a right to do that, but you need to know the risk. The risk is they can take your phone for a while.
Mhm.
Excuse me, what is the safe period for the green card holders to return after this vacation if they go out of the country? Instead of 6 months is the period, what would be the best period?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of depends, and it also depends on the frequency of travel. I don't want to give, prescribe a number, like 3 months is good, but use your best judgment, use your discretion. If you're having a lot of, even brief trips that are very, very frequent can raise suspicion. So use your best judgment.
Another question is that if they have taken our instrument and if they don't give any receipt, what should you do?
If they take it and they don't give you a receipt, I mean, if you ask for a receipt, they really should give it to you. If they don't, I suppose you can contact, an attorney or another organization like ours who can maybe get in touch with CBP to see to try to track the phone and, locate it, see if it's still with that federal agency or a different one. I'm not sure, I don't know what the recourse would be if they don't give it to you on site, but I'm sure you can try to figure out a way to recover it or at least track it after the fact. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for being here and helping us with this. Just a use case scenario. Those people coming back from Saudi Arabia
Yes.
after Hajj or
Sure.
Umrah,
Mhm.
they are U.S. citizens
Yeah.
and they have a U.S. passport and they have global entry.
Uh-huh.
What are the odds that they go to a secondary screen?
You know, it's hard for me to say. I can't, you know, I think for somebody with global entry, perhaps it would be less likely, right? Because they've kind of already screened you in advance. But again, it's not off the table, right? It's still a possibility. You're not exempt just because you're a U.S. citizen or even a U.S. citizen with global entry. It can still happen.
Thank you.
Just to be prepared, maybe, who knows? Is there any like set of questions they always ask? Just to be prepared.
A set of questions. Well, so yeah, you know, you can anticipate that they're going to ask about the trip, right? Like, where did you go? How long were you there? What was the purpose of your trip? Are you bringing anything back?
Talking about the secondary.
The secondary inspection. You know, that really, it could be anything. I mean, it's hard to say. I think, you know, they might try to, it could be a fishing expedition where they ask you about, you know, your immigration history, coming back and forth into the country, the reason for those trips. They could, and they could ask you your political views. Yeah, and that's actually a great point. So it's possible that during the secondary inspection, they could ask you your, you know, political views, what you think about Trump, what you think about Palestine. You are not obligated to answer those questions, okay? You know, politely decline if you're asked, you know, if you don't feel comfortable answering, saying, you know, I prefer not to answer that. But yes, it is possible that, you know, in secondary inspection, they could question your political views and things like of that nature, okay? And another thing, if, you know, when you're coming back in, be sure you don't have a kafia in your bag, you know? I don't like to say that, but really, you don't want to have those, you know, materials that could be perceived in some way by the government, right?
So just to point out, last time I traveled last year with global entry,
Mhm.
I didn't even interact with an officer.
Oh, that's
There
nice.
was a fast lane where you just go to the kiosk, they do a face detection. You don't even have
You don't
to
even have
enter
to talk.
anything.
Yeah.
You used to scan a passport. This is last summer. I'm not sure if things have changed, but
Mhm.
and you just scan your face. They know who you are. They give you a receipt. You don't even have to interact with an officer.
Yeah.
If the situation is the same this year, then odds are
We're in
probably,
luck. Yeah.
things could change.
Yeah, hopefully. I haven't been through O'Hare lately, so I don't know exactly what, you know, if global entry people still have to talk to an officer or not, but, you know, hopefully. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, for the most part, you know, your travel day should be uneventful. This is just preparing you guys in case something does go wrong, particularly for U.S. citizens.
Is there any secondary inspection for domestic travels?
I don't think so, no. No, because for domestic travel, you don't encounter customs. Yeah, so there should not be any, yeah.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
So typically your customs is done in a port of entry.
Exactly.
Like if I'm returning to Chicago, then it's all airport.
Mhm.
But there are certain airlines like Etihad. If you are traveling back to US
Mhm.
and if you're in Abu Dhabi, then typically the customs is done over there. Not the customs, but the immigration is all done over. Even customs is all
Yes.
done over there.
Yeah.
Again, you know, out of curiosity, have you heard of any kind of difference in terms of how the custom, the CBP officials work in
that
those-
environment?
Yeah, in that environment versus here.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't. I don't know what the difference in questioning or just, you know, how the process would differ but I have heard that, yes, you can, you know, go through customs in, say, Abu Dhabi or somewhere else before coming to the United States. That is a possibility. I'm not, honestly not as knowledgeable about how that process might differ.
Because I went through that process 3 years back.
Okay.
Again, that was before this whole thing
Sure.
started, right? So
Sure.
I don't know how it is going to be now. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know if you have heard anything.
Yeah.
Whether there is any precaution we need to take other than what we would normally take.
Sure.
If you were to be coming in over here.
Yeah.
If you're in O'Hare, then yes, you have the right to attorney. You
Sure.
can call into attorney. If you're there, you kind of are limited.
Yeah, you are a little bit more limited, that's true.
But for a US citizen, assuming they'll still get you onto the flight and get you over to US, then I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah. Again, because you can't be denied entry.
So maybe I have a question also. So whatever you have spoken so far, I have gone through that actually. So I was detained and also questioned like that. But I felt like I should respond to those questions. The questions were very derogatory. So like, what do you think about ISIS and Al-Qaeda? Where did you training in Saudi Arabia? Those kind of questions came through to me. Thankfully, at that time, Palestine and Israel issue was not there. This was when Trump, the first term.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was a citizen, even those. But I did feel obligated to answer them. I did answer them. And they were very happy with my responses, by the way. So they let me go. But I felt like, is there a way we can take action after that happens? Because that kind of questioning is really not appropriate for a citizen of US.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is incredibly, demeaning and derogatory. To me, those kinds of questions reflect a certain racial animus, right? That's a good question, because to me, it does seem to be some sort of violation of your rights, to be asked those kinds of derogatory questions. But in some sense, they could sort of justify it by trying to establish that, like, you're not tied to any sort of criminal organizations outside the U.S. So that's a good question. I'll look into that and maybe get back to you.
An attorney himself, he was stopped for secondary screen, and there is a case against them because they detained him longer
Then they should have.
They let him go late. Right. He went through some troubles, and he's suing them for that.
Sure.
There was a list of attorneys who have been defending, people that have protest or had ties to students in Colombia,
Sure.
and Harvard,
Mhm.
and they were on a blacklist. And when they came back from vacation with their family, they were detained,
Mhm.
secondary screening, harassed. So.
Mhm. Yeah, these things are happening.
Questions?
Is care available after hours?
I'll let you have it handle this.
Ahmed Rahab is, yeah. So you can call me anytime, and I'll make sure you get help.
That hotline that you referred to. As an attorney, do you recommend summer vacations? If the background is everything is clear, everything is aligned.
I'll tell you, here's the best that I can explain it. As a US citizen, I travel. If I were a green card holder, I don't know that I would under this administration. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, but it's highly dependent on the circumstances of your case, and how much risk you're, willing or able to take, right?
So I just want to repeat what I said earlier. I mean, if you're a citizen, it's fine. If you're in, LPR, essential travel only. If you're a visa holder, don't travel. That's my advice.
So this law is staying as long as the administration is alive.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. I mean,
Is it-
yeah, or, someone defeats it in court, it's found
It can be
unconstitutional.
reversed, right?
Yeah, it can be reversed. Yep.
Only with the next administration.
Yeah, with the next administration, if they decide to overturn these regulations, or again, as Ahmed said, if it's defeated in court, found to be unconstitutional or violates the law in some way, then, that would do away with some of these regulations. But for now,
The special administration back then, they reversed all of that.
right.
Is there another dimension of this when it comes to dual citizenship? Does that add any complications?
I see. So the one sort of advice that I have for you if you're a dual citizen, so I know this is relevant for folks going on Hajj who have a Pakistani passport. I understand that it could be cheaper to travel on that passport. So the thing with, having two passports, if you're planning to travel on the other passport, and that other country is going to stamp a visa in that passport, make sure you have it readily available when you come back to the US to present it, because chances are they're going to want to see it. They're going to flip through your American passport and not find a stamp and say, where is it? So have that ready. But other than that, nothing I can think of.
I guess like a general question though, the CBP officials, do they have record or access to your immigration records like when you became US citizen?
Yes. Yes.
Those details?
They have that, yeah. And they can even get your criminal history very quickly with it, just like, they have quite a bit.
The system is mostly bogged down with easy to go after cases like, people with criminal backgrounds, people on a blacklist, people, in some kind of refugee status. So I think they go through those people first before they, go after, I think, US citizens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and especially now, that the system is so backed up. So that was my personal.
No, I think that's right. I think, they do often target the most vulnerable among us first. So I think,
Targeted or just random?
Sorry, say it again.
Is it random or they do target special groups? Like some countries
Yeah.
coming from certain countries.
I think both. I think they do a little of both, honestly. That's my personal opinion.
If you ask me, after Trump went to the Muslim world and came back with $4 trillion, all Muslims should have free visas. But unfortunately, these guys, they don't negotiate too well, apparently. Nothing back. He gives us Muslim bans and they give him trillions of dollars. There's a barcode. Where's the intern center? This is for internships. If any of your kids want to intern with us.
You guys want to take a picture too of the screen?
But you can take a picture of the screen for the other stuff now. You should probably make printouts for relevant to the civil rights stuff.
Yeah.
Internships.
Yeah, 312, yeah, 1520. And that, don't forget about that trusted travelers.
312.
Is this your number?
That's our office number.
That's our office.
It's not the 24/7 number.
That's tapunus.org website.
Yeah, tapus.org. Tapus.org.
There was one scenario where you had on the slide up there that the pilot can deny entry to a traveler. What are the typical grounds for that? Do they suspect you as a threat? Because typically pilots don't get to see you unless they hear some odd behavior, right?
Yeah.
The
You know,
staff room.
I would imagine if a passenger is behaving erratically or something, that's like an obvious situation. Maybe if, I don't know, another situation I'm imagining is if like CBP contacts the pilot to tell them. I mean, I guess there's many ways that a pilot can become suspicious of a passenger on the flight, but
But as a US citizen or a green card holder, do you have the right to know that at that moment, or might not have the right
the right to know,
as to why you?
why you're being removed? Good question. I don't know. I would imagine though, if you're being escorted off of a plane, they'll probably tell you. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to think of.
No, I know.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah. I know.
those countries that are like more like politically unstable, is it like more susceptible to pushing?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think, yeah, those countries that are, the government tends to discriminate against, like Muslim majority countries, I think folks coming from there may be subject to more screening. I wouldn't be surprised. And actually, I can put my email up here because I wasn't here, so if you guys have any.
So I have a question from online audience. Any suggestion for domestic travel?
Yeah, so for domestic travel, you're going to need your real ID now, so that's a thing. But yeah, I think ensuring that you have the requisite travel documents, and an abundance of caution is not a bad thing. So if you're a green card holder and you want to bring those that evidence of continuous residence, it's not a terrible idea.
But you don't need to carry a green card all the time for domestic travel.
I would have those documents with you. I would have the real ID, I would have the green card, I would bring everything with you. I think it's better.
Are there any key differences between what ICE can do versus what CBP can do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so CBP is typically they're in charge of border protection. Right? So you'll see them at the border, you'll see them at airports, you'll see them at other ports of entry. ICE is enforcement. Think of them like the police of DHS, of immigration, exactly. So they're responsible for detention and deportation. Okay.
So are they also posted at the airport?
Yes, they are at the airport, but they're not. You're not necessarily going to interact with them. Yeah, you'll interact with CBP primarily, and then if for some reason you're going to be detained, right, then they'll call ICE, and I think ICE is somewhere. I mean, I know they have like an office in O'Hare. They do have a presence there, but you likely will not interact with them.
Have you seen any recent cases at O'Hare?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a recent random one is I had a U.S. citizen who came in, and they asked to see his phone. They asked him to unlock it, so he unlocked it, and they took the phone from him. And this was a month ago, and they since haven't given it back. So that's a very recent example of something I've kind of encountered. He's a U.S. citizen. I think I mentioned that. Yeah. So that's something.
Any denials for green cards?
Denials for green cards. I have not personally encountered any, in the last couple of weeks. But there's somebody who took an international trip. So he had criminal history from a long time ago that he thought wouldn't matter, wouldn't impact travel today. And he took an international trip and came back and was detained because of that criminal history from back then. Okay, because he hadn't taken any international trips, since that conviction, right? So that's just a reminder. Like even if the conviction is very old, and even if it doesn't seem serious, this administration has expanded the crimes that are mandatorily detainable. Okay, so like certain shoplifting, larceny, these sort of offenses, property crimes that maybe necessarily wouldn't land you in detention today would or could. Okay, and also the enforcement priorities of this administration have shifted a little bit. So, criminal history is something that you should be very, hesitant about traveling if you have that.
Speeding tickets do not count.
Speeding tickets do not count. You're okay. Speeding tickets, parking, traffic violations, not a big deal. Expungements do not cure things for immigration purposes. Yeah, generally.
So when you say criminal, are you referring to prison or just any
Yeah, good question. So I suppose it does depend a little bit on like what you were convicted of. So you could have been convicted of something and didn't serve time, and it could still be problematic for you. Typically, though, the crimes that do land you in trouble typically are the ones that you had to serve some amount of time for. Okay, but that's not to say that if you didn't serve time, it's not an issue.
So even if it's really old, would they still let you into the country if you are a US citizen?
If you're a U.S. citizen, I'm sorry. Okay, so the stuff about crimes was more about LPRs, green card holders. If you're a U.S. citizen with, crimes in your background, old, and presumably you've already answered for them, right? Like there's not an active warrant out for your arrest, you're fine. That shouldn't raise issues. Okay.
One more.
Sorry. Follow those phones that we detain against those people. Because they hold the phones.
Yeah, you're right. They do hold the phones. So I have not personally represented somebody who's now facing criminal charges as a result of their phone being detained or, searched. You're right. It could though, it's, if they do an investigation and find something and, potentially, being investigated. Yeah.
So I have an online question here.
Sure.
So any problem with bringing large amounts of gold or cash?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there is a limit to how much money you can bring. I believe it's 10,000, but don't quote me on that. So, be very mindful of that. And we always want to do quite a bit less than whatever it is. Like let's say 30% less, because we don't want to raise alarm or suspicion, okay? Especially now, it's not the time to test our limits.
Are you going to have this presentation available for the audience?
Yeah, I'm sure we could. Yeah, I'm sure we could figure it out. Yeah, I'm sure we can figure out a way to get it available.
Yeah, we can have that. Put our website.
Yeah.
All that up.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, on our website. We can have it like, so we can have that set up.
I don't know if this will help.
Mhm.
For people for green cards and all. Just a thought is like, I know we all are accustomed to using smartphones all the time.
Mhm.
Especially if you're traveling, you can still use your phone. Have the same number, but just have a regular phone like that, phone like that.
Yeah.
That does not have
Mhm.
systems that will let you search.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. If you have a separate device at home that's not as loaded up with content and information, definitely.
I was just thinking about it because you said unless you share in terms of.
That's actually something that we advise in general. If you're very concerned, you can take a burner phone.
Mhm.
But then also, and it's a question for you, what about if you keep your phone because that's what you're accustomed to? It takes, I don't know, has a nice camera, it takes nice pictures, whatever. But you delete the apps that are like, let's say WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever. Is that something where they can say you have to download them and log into them?
So I have not heard of that request. That's a good question. I have not heard of them, they look at your phone and they say, you don't have WhatsApp, you don't have Instagram, download it. I haven't heard them do that. It seems like a directive that they couldn't, command of somebody, but I suppose they could ask. And I would imagine in that instance, you can refuse. That's what I would do.
They might ask you to download WhatsApp, but with Facebook, it's optional. It's not tied up to your phone.
Oh, even WhatsApp is optional.
But I think it's a trend like everybody's messaging WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you decide to delete it, the government can't tell you have to download it.
Yeah.
I think they can, as long as your phone is unlocked, they can download it. All it requires is that 6-digit code gets sent to your text. It's sent via text to your phone. If they have access to your phone, they can just keep.
But I believe WhatsApp, the info on WhatsApp is not kept on the cloud. That's on your phone. You said he's not an IT guy, is that right?
To me?
Yeah.
I'm in cyber.
Yeah.
There you go.
So to my knowledge, Facebook, the information, and Instagram is kept on a cloud. So if you're able to log into, if anybody's able to log into, download and log into these apps, they'll get all the information. But with WhatsApp, I believe the information is stored on your phone.
It's actually stored on the cloud because I just tested it out before coming here. But I'm taking a burner phone with me. That's just because of the fact.
Maybe they don't want. It's all being backed up, right?
No, but here's the thing. So if you look at your phone, you'll find that a lot of the data is taken by WhatsApp. So if it was in the cloud, then why is it taking so much hard this data?
So you have a copy backed up on the cloud. Yes. So what happens is like, what I did is I used the burner phone, I downloaded WhatsApp and sent it to the phone number, right? And to this phone number, send the text message to this, like feeding that code, and it downloaded everything that was there in the WhatsApp.
Did it download the groups
Yes.
names or also the chats?
All of it.
How far back does it go?
It actually, I didn't check how far, but I felt like it went back to everything, whatever I had.
Unless you deleted it.
Unless you physically deleted it. I don't know, honestly, if it deletes it right away from the cloud, I do not know. That's something that was probably more familiar in WhatsApp. Tell us. We can probably Google it and find that out.
Definitely more than a year. Could go back 2 years of backup.
I think the best thing is, I think you just try to delete anything that, as you mentioned, right, you feel like it is. Even if they are able to pull it up, backup, you can say, you know what, this is just marketing to you. But again, if you have responded to it, then obviously then
You've engaged with the
you're an
contact.
actor associated with that conversation.
Technically, political opinion is protected free speech. I mean, for example, I have tons of stuff. I'm always exchanging opinions with people and public, these are all public groups. And personally, I'm not deleting nothing, because that's information that I say public.
Right. A lot of times they might use that against you.
They're welcome to. With me, they're welcome.
But again, there are a lot of people.
Probably welcome it, but everybody else.
Yeah, people who don't have much of exposure to legal rulings and about the amendments, obviously, they will fall a trap to it.
Yeah.
It's no difference than a phishing trap.
Mm.
That's how phishing emails are sent out there. They're not too familiar, you fall a trap to it.
Yeah.
If you go to Hajj, you get the smartphone.
Yeah, for the soap.
For all the new soap.
Yeah, but you can get a smartphone. All I'm saying is, get a smartphone, don't download.
Don't download it.
Just keep it bare minimum.
Yeah.
Like no soap.
But even if you do, they can, according to you, download WhatsApp anyway and access your WhatsApp in your
Yeah, but here's the thing though, that is correct. But if you take a burner phone, right, and you don't use the number from here right now, right, so it's not going to operate over here, agreed. But once you get there, you get a visitor's chip or SIM, and then that way the WhatsApp is only limited to that new number that is assigned to your SIM. So you're okay with that because then it's not going to have any, you won't have any access to your WhatsApp on this phone.
If you have side conversation, we're going to lose people online. So just want to make sure we have to.
These are actually not side, these are main conversations, but with other microphones, so we got to bring the microphone back. So what about, so now we have eSIMs.
Yes.
And so you can't really take or put in, when you come back, because I presume everything we've been talking about is when you're returning. Like none of this is at risk as you're leaving or entering another country. It's when you're coming back. So when you're coming back, that's when you want to be prepared for
That's the reason
secondary.
that you want to go with the burner phone. I know eSIM is very convenient, right? Especially with iPhone 15 or 16, yeah, you can just have an eSIM, right? That is again technically easy for them because your eSIM
You can give
is
me the
still
microphone.
I think this point is made. Burner phone is
Yeah.
your recommendation.
I think the best thing is go with a different phone when you're traveling outside. That's your safest bet. Otherwise, you always get into this, and it's not difficult for them to unlock your phone. It's not that difficult. If they want, they can do it. So. I think this is really helpful. I think this forum is helpful for us to. And the last thing is, I think the free Wi-Fi that
On the microphone again, we have people online.
think the
Keep-
free
keep-
Wi-Fi-
keep-
And then the back again started talking.
No, I think it's a common, it's not about security, it's common sense. Because free Wi-Fi's, that is another trap. It's very easy for anybody to get into your phone. That's the easiest way they can break into your phone. If it's a free Wi-Fi that you're connected to.
I'm connected to free Wi-Fi right now.
Masjid is different. VPN is good. If you don't have VPN, you can download it. There's tons of free VPN softwares available. Download it. If you want to really use it, you download VPN and then connect through VPN. Then you're better off. Otherwise, it's a lot easier. That's one of the reasons why when we travel, especially with the corporate phones, we are discouraged from using free Wi-Fi's.
So we focus more on the phone. What about laptops?
Same thing.
Same thing. Any digital devices.
You cannot change things on your laptop.
So that's why I would recommend traveling light. Like, do you need it? Do you need the laptop?
Work laptop.
If it's not the work.
If it's work, then presumably it's going to be,
Cleaner.
cleaner than your private, your personal device. So.
Here's a question. So, and this is not a question for most of us, but this is a general question. Let's say somebody has some personal photos, whatever, spousal, whatever. Is that something that they're allowed to, I mean, what is the protection of a US citizen against the misuse of their personal photos? We're not even talking political stuff at this point.
I mean, they presumably, if they're looking through your phone, I mean, if they attach it to that external device or however they get access, that stuff is viewable by them. Is it usable? I mean, unless we're talking about revenge, like there are very limited I don't anticipate a situation where they would use that kind of content. They really shouldn't, and I'm sure there are laws against it. There are laws against using that kind of explicit content to blackmail you. I mean, I don't know what it would be used for, but it shouldn't be used against.
And what about the question, can they keep copies of any data on your phone, or can they only view it?
That is a good question. I think that they likely are entitled to have copies of things, and they can. I think it's something that they can very easily do, particularly if they, proffer some reason about having an investigation or this and that. I think they can definitely try to, duplicate whatever information you have on your phone and have a copy for their records.
Good question. Anybody else with a question or comment?
If the phone is taken, how do you contact here?
How do you contact here? That's a great question. So you can call us at this number. You can email me. So this is my direct email address. Yeah, and definitely check out that tap.org. Is that what it was? Tap US. Okay. Tap US. Because that is a great way for us to tapus.org. Okay. That's a great way for us to kind of keep track of your travel date and keep us informed so that if something does go wrong, we can step in and help you. Of course, we have more, influence at O'Hare in Illinois. So let's say you're landing in New York and then coming to Chicago, we might not have as much of a influence, but we do have a, CARE chapter in New York that can also assist you or wherever you may be. Okay.
All right. Thank you all very much.
So for pending cases for a green card or family reunion, what's going to happen to those cases?
So, I mean, those cases currently there is no new regulations or laws about how pending green card applications should be treated, right? They should be treated the same as they were treated in, before the Trump administration. So we haven't heard any directives about how like I-485's green card applications are being processed differently.
Because what's happening in the news, you could hear cases,
Yeah.
broken green cards, people go into
I
an
see.
interview, they're sending them home.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So again, I think if the facts of your case are not, something to be concerned about, I wouldn't necessarily be overly concerned about the outcome of my green card application. Now we know that, ICE or the Department of Homeland Security has been screening people's social media use for quote unquote anti-Semitic content, which we know to be any content that, happens to just be critical of Israel. So, I guess the advice is to just sort of be careful about your social media presence, do what you can to control the factors that are within your control, right? But in terms of, how adjustments of status are being processed, it should be going, in much the same way, except maybe perhaps like cases that in the past that maybe had some minor issues with them that would have sort of slid under the radar and somehow been approved. These new enforcement priorities means a lot of those cases that may not be treated the same way. They may not get as much, as high of an approval rate.
Are we good? Or is this going to be like Arab goodbyes? It's going to take forever.
I think it was really helpful.
Thank you very much. We're glad to be here, always here for you guys. Inshallah. Jazakumullah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Final question.
No last question.
No. Okay. Check.
So much to do, so much about what's on.
Yeah.